Coming up on the Otago Opportunity, we're talking to Chanel Gardner about healthy oceans.
This is the Otago Opportunity, a limited series look at the future of our province. I'm your host, Pauline Moore, and in this series, we're taking the policies of the Opportunity Party and moving them out of the Wellington think tank and into our own backyard here in Dunedin. Each week we'll hear from local business owners, students and families about how a tax reset or a citizens' assembly would actually impact their daily lives. It's not about the politics, it's about the future of the place we call home. Welcome to the Otago Opportunity.
Kia ora and welcome to the Otago Opportunity. Joining me today is Dave Bainbridge-Zafar, the Opportunity candidate for Dunedin, and our guest Chanel Gardner, Otago Regional Councillor, Executive Officer of the Otago Rock Lobster Industry Association and founder of Tuaroa Foundation. Welcome.
Kia ora. Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Chanel, you've obviously got a passion and a love of the ocean and value the place that the ocean environment has at the centre of community and ecotourism and fishing industry. But what led you to step up and be such an advocate and leader in this space?
It's a bit corny. It was love.
That's simple.
I know, that's pretty simple. So my partner and his brother started Harbour Fish, a commercial fishing business, processor, exporter, retail, wholesaler, all the whole kit and caboodle. And so he was fishing in the early parts of our relationship, and then probably only about 6 years ago, when I was on a maternity leave, they were starting to get big enough that they needed to start paying attention to what was happening in policy for fisheries nationwide. So they said, you're a lawyer, you can read and write and do submissions. So that was the thin edge of the wedge, shall we say.
So you were very useful. So
I was exploited.
But you didn't. What did you set out to do originally when
law?
You left?
Yep.
You did set out to do law. Yeah. Okay.
So I've done. I started in family law, practiced for about 12 years, and was in civil litigation before our last baby. So, yeah.
And what worries you most about our oceans?
Oh, look, it's probably. I'm not worried about our oceans. I'm more concerned about what other people are doing in their neck of the woods. You know, for us in Otago, we're so blessed because we have such a healthy marine ecosystem. So it's just that big problem where we are so small and we can do all the right things here in New Zealand and especially here in Otago. But if everyone else is burning everything down, it really makes it hard. But I'm a firm believer in, you lead by example, you do what you can where you can, and then that's the best you can do. You never give up.
So what does that look like, though, showing what we can do?
I think for me personally, and Dave's in the political sphere, it's you put yourself forward to advocate for the things that you know about, and you try and support the beliefs of those around you, and you try and do what's right. I mean, I don't think anyone would step into politics without doing that. So my strengths are that I can come to things with a very open mind, and if another good idea is presented to me, I will take that idea. I don't have a fixed mindset where I go down one path and one path only. I'm very collaborative. So much when I've spoken to Dave, it's about working together and figuring out, what solution are we all looking for?
And one of those solutions, Chanel, when we met, we talked about the Otago Biosphere project, and that's something that your foundation, the Tuaroa Foundation, launched some years ago, and it's you and your daughter, right, that's involved there?
Yeah, and you know what it's like in a small group. It's your band of merry friends as well. So, that's a real passion project of mine, and it actually came out of frustration. So seeing how beautiful our marine ecosystem is and how it supports our food sovereignty, how we look after and feed our communities, but then seeing this really massive disconnect with the mindset nationally that what we were doing was bad. And for me, that was quite shocking. And then when you look overseas, you see that, UNESCO has this framework, the Biosphere Reserve framework, and it's in 176 countries. There's over 700 of them globally. So many other countries are cracking into it. And the thread of it is that we live in nature. So we need to work with science, culture, education, the whole system, not just conservation or fisheries. It's a whole holistic package which appealed to me.
So everything's joined up, and you felt like we're just a bit out of step over here then?
Look, I don't think we've needed one, really, to be fair to the Department of Conservation and Ministry for Environment. Historically, we've been smashing it in the environmental stakes. We really have, and we've had a country we can be really proud of in that. And I'm not saying that that isn't the case now, but sometimes better tools come along, and you have to be open to those opportunities.
What's the difference between the Biosphere Reserve and Marine Reserve?
So it's funny because in Canada they don't use the word reserve because obviously it has quite negative connotations to First Nations people, so they call it a biosphere. And here we would probably go down that path as well, because the reserve for us, that's a piece of legislation. So a reserve here is a no-take construct, which is fabulous. And the biosphere is more of a sustainable economic utilisation where you're looking after the healthy people, thriving environment.
So we've got various UNESCO things, and UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. That's what UNESCO stands for. Obviously, Dunedin is a UNESCO City of Literature. We've got not far from here UNESCO Global Geopark, Elephant Rocks and Meraki Boulders and the likes. And there's various UNESCO World Heritage Sites. I think Tongariro National Park in the North Island is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. What exactly is a UNESCO biosphere, and are there any in New Zealand already?
No, so that's the exciting thing. And sometimes the universe is all about timing. So we just don't have one of the suite of UNESCO tools. So we have all the other tools that UNESCO uses globally, but we just haven't had a biosphere yet. And I think for me, the timing of, the Department of Conservation being under a lot of pressure, community groups financially being under a lot of pressure, a biosphere, and for Otago to be Aotearoa's first biosphere, is really an opportunity to go, actually, these are all the amazing things that we have, all the amazing things that we do, and this is our undertaking together to build on that moving forward.
And do you see it as predominantly a kind of tourism thing? We have our great walks, and whilst there are other really great walks with a little g in New Zealand, once it gets the name Great Walk, tourists flock to it. Do you see that biosphere being potentially a really good tourism thing for Otago?
Yeah, look, other biospheres globally have had some really massive uptakes in tourism. Is that what Otago necessarily wants? Maybe not, but the beauty of a biosphere is that it's place-based, participatory and community-led. So that involves everybody coming together with a roadmap. Is that if we want to boost tourism numbers to our city, what does that look like? How do we have the wraparound supports for that? Does Ngāi Tahu want to expand its Māori tourism sector? What are the opportunities for all of the community? But, it's so easy to look at all the other biospheres and go, they're levers, some for tourism, some for, more positive climate action in the business space, more of the usual environmental stuff. That's really easy. But just also making sure that the youth voice, the underrepresented voices, they're an authentic part of the conversation. They're not just a token school kid on the youth council. It's understanding and acknowledging that just like our elders in our communities, you have to have both ways working together. It's just a place where everyone who wants to have a say can have a say, and if you don't want to have a part of it, it doesn't affect you at all, because it doesn't introduce any new regulations to you. It just all the laws and rules stay and they exist, and no new property rights or anything, but you just are coming together with a different lens over some old problems, but you're coming in with a slightly new approach.
And you've already got a number of kind of ocean zones. Obviously, Otago recently got 5 new marine reserves, but there's also a couple of other things, right, off the Otago coast. There's Matatais and Taiapures. What are the difference between those kind of 3 things that already exist and then potentially a biosphere? What would be the difference?
Well, I guess biosphere just looks how it sounds. It's an imaginary bubble. So it's something that ties everything together and puts it all on the same stage. So we have the reserves as the core or anchor of our biosphere, and then we have the customary tools of Mataitai and Taipuri, like the East Coast Taipuri Committee here have done amazing work. So and then when we come onto land, we have many spaces that have protection. You know, we have the eco-sanctuary, we have numerous wetlands. Like we have, from a habitat point of view, we're already a biosphere. You know, we already qualify 10 times over because our environment is so special.
So do you see the biosphere being purely marine, or does it come onto land as well? What's the geography you see for the Otago biosphere if it does happen?
Look, it's kind of like local government reform. You could go as big or as little as you want with the biosphere. But for me, even though I'm just new on the regional council, I'm very much a systems person. So for me, things need to be mountains to sea. And actually, for me, that means, having Queenstown, Wanaka, even the bits of the Mackenzie, a corridor, that the biosphere corridor that just enables that flow of not just water, but people. We're closing the loop between here and Central Otago, but it's the people who decide.
So how does that all fit together? Who's helping you, and are you sort of the mastermind of it, trying to bring all these groups together?
Oh, yeah, look, I'm not sure if you knew Neville Pete. So he was a very well-known Dunedin conservationist, worked for the Department of Conservation. He actually tried to get biosphere off the ground maybe even 10, 15 years ago when he worked for DOC. But again, timings. They didn't really need that tool at that time. But so I'm definitely not the first person to try and give it legs, and I'm definitely not the first person in Aotearoa. So what I would really like, myself, the foundation, and the numerous community groups we've been engaging with, we do want to be the first. It's I travelled to China for the Biosphere World Congress last September, and they were just incredibly surprised, A, that New Zealand didn't have one, and B, they were just desperate to onboard New Zealand. Every single person in that Congress, and it's quite overwhelming being in China and then in a UNESCO, it was quite amazing. But every single person said, "What do you need?" They're just
and who are we competing against? If you say you want the Otago Biosphere to be the first in New Zealand, who else is in the running? Where else are we going to get biospheres?
Murmurings in the Hawke's Bay, Abel Tasman. So I think, and that's part of the reason I brought biosphere as a priority action onto the Regional Council. It really fits for Otago. We have 3 really active runaka on the coast. That was part of a fascination point almost for UNESCO, is that that Indigenous knowledge, the place-based Te Ao Māori-led knowledge systems, and that really is a key differentiating point to the rest of the world, that we have an Indigenous peoples with acknowledged rights. They have assets, they have standing in our communities, and that's not actually the case for Indigenous peoples in some of these biospheres. It's really an opportunity to say, not just to the world, but to the rest of Aotearoa, this is what good can look like. And it's very much, it can be as big or as I said, as big or as little as you want it, and it can include as many people as want to be part of it.
And so,
sorry, Pauline. You're obviously the chair also of the Rock Lobster Foundation, or the Rock Lobster industry.
It's a long one.
So what is that? What is that group? What are they there for? What's your role there?
Yep. So you'll understand with New Zealand fisheries, they're all divided up into stocks, and one stock down here is Cray 7. Excuse me. So our neck of the woods is divided up, and from Pleasant River down to just south of Nugget Point, that's our crayfish area. So any of the science that's done to check the health and well-being of the rock lobster fishery is here. It's under that Cray 7 band, and then there's a National Rock Lobster Industry Council, it really did blow my mind when I scratched the surface, because it's like, this is just one species, and it's got so much care and attention over it. So my role as executive officer is to help our fishers locally. So we have 8 crayfishers, and we've got 27 quota owners. So it's a really, really tiny fishery compared to some of the other ones, but it's a really incredible example of how a well-managed fishery can recover and then thrive.
And how do we know it's well managed? Is it the number of crayfish, the size of the crayfish?
Again, the other thing that surprised me is all the working groups that sit behind these ministries. So the science working group for just this stock is immense. They have people from Fish and Game, they've got every party sitting in on the science. So these are scientists working through the stock assessments, what our onboard computers, our data loggers, where we're fishing gets pinged every 6 minutes. On the other vessels there's cameras. It's so closely monitored, and that's kind of a thing that makes me a bit sad with especially fisheries. If you put aside any historical bad behaviour, if you look at it now, there's so much science that wraps around and protects it, and then there's so many people. Often the dock scientist is arguing with the Fisheries New Zealand scientist. So these working group teams meetings are wild, but that's where we can say over a trend of 30 odd years, our fishery has gone from strength to strength, and how they calculate what the total catch can be from that population, is very, very finely calculated to the ton, really, and we're a small fishery, like we've got 111 ton currently. So the, Cray 8, which is a big Southland family, which goes right around the bottom and right up the other side of the South Island, they've got thousands of tons available to them to catch, and that's measured in a sustainable way, checked and proven by the scientists.
Looking into the future a little bit, obviously, Shane Jones recently paused the Fisheries Amendment Bill because it got a fair amount of public backlash, and it's not going to be progressed now until after the election, and who knows what will happen at the election.
Exactly.
What's your view on the Fisheries Amendment Bill and what Shane Jones and co were trying to do with it, and the public backlash that it received?
Yeah, look, it was a not well managed situation from us in fisheries. A couple of those amendments were just more of a operational on the boat practicality thing. But some of the other parts of the bill were very much just garnered completely terrible attention, and the ministry and I'd even say our seafood industry didn't react. They didn't front foot it. They got too technical with what they were trying to achieve. And what I've kind of concluded with all these fisheries amendment bills, marine reserves, the conservation bill, what New Zealand cares about isn't a reserve or a conservation. They just want to know that New Zealand is well and that the people who are in charge are looking after it and monitoring it so that it's well. It's not about closing things or selling things or regulating things. Is New Zealand well?
Yeah, and obviously here in Dunedin, we've got our yellow-eyed penguins, the hoi-ho, and they're under threat, and we want to see their numbers return. And similarly with our albatross colony and all sorts of things, we want to make sure our Tonga species are flourishing, right?
Yeah, precious.
Certainly, Opportunity was not a fan of that fisheries amendment bill. Part of our goal under our Healthy Oceans policy is to make sure that more of our ocean territory is protected. Mm-hmm. It's not an area I know a whole lot about. It's not my area of expertise at all. My knowledge extends from kind of watching David Attenborough documentaries.
Yeah, that was such a beautiful documentary.
Oh, Oceans was amazing. Seeing not just the damage that's being done to the oceans by things like bottom trawling, but also seeing how hopeful David Attenborough was that it could recover, and showing those examples from around the world of where things have recovered and you've got really healthy oceans. That was really inspiring that we can
absolutely
do it if we do the right thing.
Absolutely. And to be honest, you can see that off the coast right now. And that's why it's important when we're talking with like you, Dave, and Q, it's the understanding that some situations are nuanced. Not every bit of the coast is the same. Not every bit of the coast has the same population pressures. We're not the Hauraki Gulf. We don't pretend to be. It's just not what it is. So it's respecting, like your marine policy, and just being able to have those conversations and go, the marine protections or any reserve chat, it's actually, instead of the mechanism that we're using, what are we wanting to achieve and how do we measure that and what does it look like? And sometimes I definitely see in political discourse, and it's getting much worse before the election. I don't have high hopes that it's going to get any better, but I'm just asking people I know who are still sitting on the fence with who to vote for is, read the policies and then look past the tool that they're proposing and look to the solution that party or that person is trying to get you to, because that's what you're voting for. You're not voting for the headline or the clickbait, the easy grab. You're looking at what solutions each of you guys are going for. So voters are going to need to do their homework.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's not so much the how, it's the what you're trying to achieve. And I know when Q and I went to the New Zealand Marine Research Centre here in Dunedin, that's part of Otago University, and we talked about our Healthy Oceans policy. We want to protect 30% of our ocean territory. They were really clear in the Marine Research Centre that 30% is just a number, and they'd much rather you protected 5% of something that's really, really important than 50% of something that's irrelevant. What are we trying to protect? Why are we trying to protect it? What are we trying to achieve? Those are the important things. Yeah.
So scientists will keep on sciencing, and that's the sort of thing with a biosphere flags, because it gives you a forum with which to have conversations with people you may not usually get access to. I'm lucky on the council because I can get access, but on a community level, you want to be able to pick up the phone in Dunedin or in Otago and say, hey, Dave, I heard you say this about it. What can you unpack that a bit more for me? That's how we kind of are down here, I think.
Yeah, it was really interesting hearing one of the scientists there saying their frustration when politicians in particular, but conservationists generally, talk about, we want to restore this environment or we want to restore this. And he was saying, you can't. Unless you time travel, you can't restore anything. Things change. The environment changes. The concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere changes. The behavior of different species changes. Everything has changed. So you can't go back and restore it to how it was. You can just think about what's the best you can make of it from where it is now.
How can we maintain and enhance?
And you mentioned there, I mean, you were talking about the election, that you don't have a whole lot of hope, but what are your kind of, for the election campaign and the behaviour of politicians? And this is my first campaign, and I'm a hopeful guy, but I'm certainly seeing some interesting behaviour. What beyond the election, what are your kind of hopes for the Otago environment over the next, 5-10 years?
Yeah, it's really seeing Otago embrace the new science that we have access to, mapping the seafloor. These things are really expensive, but if we can coordinate what everybody is trying to do and get that science really humming and robust. And my hope is that, science-based decision making with some pragmatism and some common sense and connection. My hope is that we can make some really strong, long-lasting decisions in the environmental space, not reactionary, or really taking a look at the whole system. We see it in the marine space with seaweed. You can't talk about seaweed health without looking at what comes off the land. And that's not me saying that things that come off the land are bad, but you do want to see what's happening. And then, in the Great Barrier Reef, for example, they have reef credits for farmers who reduce the fine soil particulate release that would otherwise end up on the reef. They get credits for that, reef credits, and then they can use those to reinvest back into environmental enhancement on their farm. So it's being very anchored in place, knowing the place, listening to the people. And I hope that sometimes the turmoil and the economic and the political, that actually leads to people having to collaborate more and having to work together for funding and enabling them to come together in situations where sometimes they might not, if there was lots of money around or anything, but resources are scarce. So, we have to come together to do what's best for our country.
Thanks, Chanel.
My last question for you, Chanel, what's your favourite marine animal?
Honestly, I think I'd have an absolute breakdown if I ever got to see an otter.
Yeah, sea otters are the best. Yes. I love sea otters.
I know. I love all of our species here. When I first went to uni, I wanted to be a marine scientist. There's so many amazing things, but yeah, those otters.
They hold hands and they have a favourite in their pockets and stuff like that.
They're very cute.
They're very cute.
Thank you, Chanel. We really appreciate the time you spent with us.
Thank you for having me.
And all the best with the biosphere.
Yeah, thank you.
Fabulous work. Thanks, Dave. That's all from the Otago Opportunity today. Thanks for listening, and join us next time.
This programme was approved by H.Cargo, Secretary at opportunity.org.nz.